I don't quite know. I just noticed that one of the core mechanics of the game is not applying to me, and I don't know why.
What mechanic is that?
Save ribbons, they don't exist.
Welcome, fellas, to a brand new edition of a different type of podcast. Today, we will not be catching innocent little creatures and making them battle for our amusement. No, today, we are the creatures caught in a maze for the amusement of others. My name is Dallen, and with me, I have my buddy Austin.
Hello.
And my buddy Christian.
Hello.
Alright, hey guys, it's been a bit. We're trying something new, and today, we're gonna talk about the original release of Resident Evil 1. Because I told you guys if I had to play another Pokemon game, I was gonna flip out. So thankfully, we're switching it up a little bit. I'll take the lead on this one because I know I've got a bit more history with this. I did some research, and I thought I'd go over, start a little bit with the history of Resident Evil 1 before we kind of dug in. Resident Evil 1 originally was basically going to be a kind of a sequel or remake to an old SNES horror game called Sweet Home, which ironically was actually like a licensed, video game. It's crazy. You see like a movie tie-in, but it was so well received and so well loved, that we're looking into kind of redoing it. And it kind of over time, there's a longer, more interesting story that we're not all going to get into, but it basically morphed into, the franchise starter that you see today. Another interesting kind of tidbit was for a while, it was intended to be first person. You look at Doom and things like that, and that really inspired them because it has horror elements, and they thought we'll kind of mimic that. But they weren't able to get the scares to the degree that they wanted. And so they kind of finally landed on not trying to ape action shooters and instead create their own genre, which in this case was survival horror. And we'll get in a little bit lower about what survival horror exactly is. But before I just, yap all your ears off, I kind of want to talk first impressions because I've played through this game before, but Austin, I know you've played through the remake, but this is your first time playing this version of this game, isn't it?
The classic one, yes, first time playing.
Yeah. So I guess I was just going to ask you, first impressions coming back. You've kind of seen the future and you're coming back to the past now. How do you feel about it?
Well, in terms of, at its core, it feels pretty much very similar to the remake version that I played, so I'm not really taken back about, wow, this control scheme is really weird, besides some little caveats about the controls being slightly differently mapped compared to the remake one. Who puts equip and interact on X button? Who does that?
Do you want to... Yeah, the Japanese apparently. Never forgive them. But you want to tell the people at home kind of what is different about the control scheme of both this and the remake in this case?
Well, I guess that kind of also depends on which one you're playing and if you enabled a certain thing in case you had to mod in some features to the game to play it. But I think, based on what you told me, quick turn is not a thing in the actual game, but it technically is for me.
Oh yeah, we're all playing different. I guess that's worth going over first then, before we get into all the first impressions, to kind of give an explanation of what the heck's going on with us right now. Yeah, I'm playing basically a slightly modded version of the actual PS1, American PS1 release. All it really is basically the Director's Edition with the initial cutscene uncensored, as it was in all American versions. The Japanese got an uncensored version, and I have that kind of basically hacked back in. They added in some other features I'm not really using, but the other thing is it's got the DualShock compatibility without the beautiful, beautiful music of the alternate edition that we'll be talking about next time. But that's mine. I'll just say for you, Austin, because I actually set you up, you're playing basically a hacked version of the Japanese Windows 95 port, I believe. Specifically with some mods, that's like the Seamless HD mod and a couple other things. I didn't realize when I set you up on this that it was apparently going to have some gameplay changes. I mostly just wanted you to get the classic version in a way that was very easy to, basically run at higher resolutions for video capture. without intending to change the gameplay too much. But apparently, you got some cute little quality of life changes that none of us got. So yeah. And then Christian, you're in fact playing a very special, different version, aren't you? You want to tell us about that?
Yes, I'm playing the DS version.
So instead of I made Austin play a version with higher resolutions, and I guess I made you play the version with even lower resolutions. You're playing it on a calculator, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, but that goes over what you were saying, because to our surprise, Austin, specifically with your version, you're like, where are the ink ribbons, right? That was
Yeah, I couldn't find any. Like, wait, I could just save. Nice.
You were like, you just went up to the typewriter and you're like, yeah, aren't there supposed to be ink ribbons in these games? Isn't that what they're known for? And I'm like, yeah, here's mine. And you're like, not in mine. And they're like, ooh, quick turn.
Oh man.
So yeah, he gets the perfect
easy
version,
mode,
which is funny. Well, thankfully, I did make sure, something I intended, speaking of easy mode, was I made sure none of us got the original American edition, which disabled the kind of targeting feature. As we all know, and we'll get into the controls in just a second, as we all know, when you pull your gun, you can tap a button basically to target one of the closest zombies or switch between targets, which helps a lot in a game that has a feature this has, which is fixed camera angles along with tank controls. We'll delve into that in just a second, but it's very important because you can't aim over the shoulder or first person, as they originally intended. They settled on this different control scheme. But in the American version, to up the difficulty to combat rentals, you don't have an auto-targeting system. You have to just know where they are, aim, and pray that you're able to hit them. So, because I love you all, I made sure that whatever versions we were playing did not include that crazy feature. But I guess going from there, yeah, but that's funny. Well, actually, Christian, your take I'm especially interested in, because I've been playing Resident Evil games for, I don't know, probably close to a decade now, and Austin's been a little bit more recent, but he's definitely had a lot of experience with the genre at this point. But this is your first time playing a game like this, so you want to tell us kind of how you're feeling about all the deep end that we kind of threw you into here?
Yeah, this is a game. From my experience, I've played Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
And part of Resident Evil 5. So this is my first experience with 1. And I'm glad that I'm glad that I'm playing it now, because I can already tell that as a kid this would have been a game that I would not have continued playing.
Oh man, so he doesn't like it, huh? First impression is bad, right?
It's not that I don't like it. I'm just thinking back to, like, if I had played this around the time that it came out, or when it was like new. And I don't think I would have continued playing it.
Because it's too scary, right?
Oh yes, that's why. That's 100% why.
Watch out for those polygons.
Oh man. Okay, yeah. So what's so different about this one? Yeah, is the big claims to fame or whatever is inventing the survival horror genre. A couple things it did was, rather than, as we mentioned, that first person or over-the-shoulder camera, it had fixed camera angles, kind of cinematic like a movie. And to navigate that, because it's very difficult, there's something called, and at least in America, it's called tank controls, where your character doesn't really go up relative to the camera, because the camera is frequently shifting outside of your control, but rather forward relative to the position they're facing, and left and right, not moving left and right relative to the camera, but rather tilting your character. Again, very much like you would operate a tank in a video game, where you kind of like have to aim first and then go forward. This style of gameplay has very much fallen out of fashion, for quite decades at this point. But it was actually, believe it or not, if you go back in old reviews, it was actually widely praised for being a very manageable way to navigate the system. So again, I know I just kind of bullied you, Christian. I'm actually going to bully you again. I kind of want to hear your thoughts. Be honest. Talk about what you dislike as a modern perspective. We did that with Pokemon. Let's do that here. Or what you think is valuable, or both. Your impressions of this first type of gameplay where you're having to navigate these wacky camera angles with this unique control style that you're probably not used to. How is that as a new experience for you?
The wacky camera angles and the tank controls were it's unlike anything I've ever played. I've tried to like think back to if I've ever played anything in this kind of tank controls cinematic fixed camera setting, and I don't think I've played anything like this before.
So a couple other games that had at least fixed camera angles were some of the PS1 Final Fantasies, though they didn't opt for tank controls. A lot of other horror games that you probably haven't touched, and then I guess Silent Hill would be one of the other big ones that you'd see with that kind of control scheme.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't, having not played any of those. This was brand new to me, and I can appreciate it now, because it is new, it's fresh. I definitely can see the allure that it has, especially when it came out, because like you said, there's not much like this was new, but I've caught myself a couple times getting frustrated with how half a step or half a pixel movement will change the camera, and I'll end up running into the same wall like 6 times. Or
I wish we'd gotten some footage of you.
Oh, I'm glad we don't.
Don't worry, I have my own blunders.
But I mean, I mean, I'm gonna continue. Like, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not calling.
I have you
quits.
at gunpoint.
Yeah.
So.
But I feel like as I got to basically the end of this round that we've gone through of the game, I feel like I'm getting a little bit more comfortable with the controls. So I'm curious, and now that I'm kind of getting a feel for the game, because like in terms of gameplay, and maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but when you like collect an item, I'm used to just being able to go up to where it goes and just press a button and it say like, do you want to use this item? But having to go into your bag, select the item, select use it, to then find out if it can even be used or not. And like, so that threw me. I don't want to spoil any specific puzzles, but I'm sure we'll talk about them in a minute.
Oh, yeah, we'll definitely get down to that. Yeah, I think that stems back from those roots as this kind of being started as actually like an RPG style thing. And not that later games get way better at kind of streamlining some of the things that don't intend, like it tries to keep the difficulty where it's trying to be difficult, but some of the kind of monotony, it gets a bit better as the series goes on. Rough edges are rough on this one, as we'll get back into that, but I do find it fascinating seeing those different styles, because before we move on to those puzzles, which I do want to talk about next, Austin, I really did want to hear, as someone who has not played these games quite as thoroughly as I have. I know this is a semi-new genre for you, but you've had enough time to kind of come to grips and be as comfortable as you're going to be with it. I'm curious how your perspective might have lined up with Christian's, or where it differs, or what's your take on these controls and camera angle?
So to get the full picture from my perspective, I gotta travel back in time to the very first time a Resident Evil title has graced a screen of mine, which was Resident Evil 4 on the Wii. Now, while it's not the quite same control scheme, it ingrained in my head the concept of Resident Evil camera bad. And I have gone through years and years of my life not wanting to play Resident Evil games because I got experienced to a camera angle system that I hated. And I made this very vocal to you when you got me into Resident Evil games for the first time. Resident Evil 1 Remake, the first one I ever played in this control scheme, was a nightmare to get used to. But at this point, I honestly really love it. It is a control scheme that I would play if a brand new Resident Evil game came out and they went back to tank controls. I would still buy it day one. I enjoy the system at least that much.
Wow. Now, did that take... How much time did it take for you to go from, like, what the heck is this, to, oh, actually, I'm kind of digging it? What was that time frame like for you?
2 to 3 hours into the remake, I think. It clicked fairly quickly.
Now, Christian, I don't know how long your exact playtime is, but getting through the mansion takes about 2 to maybe 3 hours if you're going slow, so it kind of makes sense that maybe a lot of that time was spent. How long do you feel getting to the checkpoint we got, which was the guardhouse? How long do you feel like that took you in hours in-game?
I mean, 2 to 3 hours, maybe for you.
Oh no.
I think it took me, I would say at least 4.
Wow. Okay. No. Yeah, because it's a new style to get used to.
It's a new style, and I got lost a few times.
I'm so excited to see if this changes, or God forbid, if this is just you slowly being drugged through the mud behind the two of us having a blast killing zombies. I hope that's not the case, but it will make for really funny podcasting if it is, at least. Oh, man.
I think it took me 2 hours exactly looking at the footage I recorded.
Yeah, I was close to that. I was actually going to be under 2 hours slightly, and then I got cocky because I have played this a lot. And I recalled, I think I mixed it up with the remake in my head, and I felt like I could handle the dogs as you're going to the guardhouse. And in my version, which had fewer dogs than yours, Austin, because mine, even though it does have the auto aim added back in, still has the increased enemy count. So there were about 6 dogs waiting. It was 3 and 3, but still there were like 6 dogs when I turned the corner, and they just stun locked me to death. And I was like, I can't even be mad because I did this to myself.
So you had 3 and 3?
Like,
I think mine was 2, 2, and 2. So I think I still had 6 dogs, but they were spread up in 3 sections of 2.
I know enemy placement's a little bit different depending on which version, if you're doing the director's cut or if it's the American or the Japanese. It's basically the same experience, but there's a couple tweaks about it. Alright, so that's enough yapping about this beautiful gameplay that we're dealing with here, but I kind of wanted to go into the other half of this equation. We've been talking a lot about like control schemes and things like that, and I do want to break down some of the puzzles and get more nitty-gritty, but before we get there, I think it's important to establish the incredibly frightening, I mean genuinely frightening, terrifying tone that this game sets up, starting with that opening cutscene, right, fellas?
Oh, yes.
I mean, that's...
The dog.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, what it...
I was shaking in my slippers.
Okay, so, like, we've all seen this. I'm putting it up on the screen now. I can't hate this, because it does establish very quickly that the tone of this game, which is trying to be scary, and I we can talk about how successful it is at being scary or not, but it also is trying to not be miserable. A lot of, actually, Austin, you and I have had a long-standing debate on kind of what qualifies as horror or not, and one of the things you had mentioned was, like, all the horror that you dislike, or what you consider an aspect of horror, is it kind of being just miserable. And I feel like this game goes out of its way to... It's gonna try and be scary. It maybe doesn't succeed, at least not, 2 decades later, but it also is trying to have some fun on the way. It doesn't want you to be miserable while playing it, and that's pretty evident with that opening cutscene, I feel like. One thing you guys did mention is our versions were slightly different, because I got the beautiful, I got a shotgun with some lyrics at the beginning of my version. I don't know if that was hacked in or what exactly I did wrong, but I have been giggling about that ever since. But yeah, that opening's pretty cheesy. Mine's a little bit more intimidating, and in fact, I'll show... I wonder if YouTube will let me. I may or may not be showing the version up there that's kind of the uncensored violence, where it's in color and you get like more kind of gore from what the dogs are doing and not just the camera shaking wildly. It's a little bit more spooky, and I think is a better representative of what the game's trying to be, where it's a little bit corny, a little bit goofy, having a little bit of fun, but is trying to actually juxtapose that with genuinely scary moments. Austin, I'll bully you first on that. How effective do you think, not later games, but this game right here, the PS1, is at being scary, at having atmosphere? What do you think?
Well, this is, from my perspective, I have maybe 5% of a horror feel for this game. It's not scary in really any capacity, in my opinion. It is very goofy and campy, but I have a really hard time personally getting scared from, like, the game came out a while ago, but the low poly zombies are not scary. The atmosphere is fun to be in, but I'm not scared around the area. Like turning a corner, camera changes and there's 2 zombies. It's like, oh hi. It's not like zombie. It's just like time for you to die now. So I'm not scared in the slightest.
Yeah, that sheen's come off a little bit. Just for reference, since this is 5% scary, what percent scary is Pokemon Yellow?
-20.
-20. Okay, so we're at least beating that. Christian, I think one of the antidotes to fear is frustration. So I have a feeling I already know what you're going to say, but I got to ask you too. Even years later, is this horror game, does it still hold any power of terror for you?
I am not scared by it, but
But you fear it.
Yes. But I will say this, in terms of like the vibe that this game has, especially with the like live action cutscenes, that I loved that.
You love the goofy camp.
It gave so much of a like 80s 90s campy horror film feel to it, like that that is worth the gameplay issues for me, honestly. That is, at least so far, that has been the saving grace of this game, because I love that feel and that vibe to it.
Go on, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that vibe goes on beyond just the intro, because while that is the height of the camp, those in-game cutscenes I don't think really remove that camp and that goofiness very much, do they, fellas?
No.
Not at all.
The best joy of the campiness are the voice acting throughout the entire game. The top tier, no game has better voice acting than this game.
Yeah, so you guys played through the Jill campaign, whereas I played through Chris, which means you guys got to experience the wonder that is Resident Evil 1 Barry Burton, which is just a delight. I mean, how often have y'all caught me just quoting stuff he says? At least Austin, I know you catch me. It's Forrest! Oh my god! It's great, and of course there's the ever memeable. You were almost a Jill sandwich, master of unlocking. This gun, I have this. It's especially useful against living things. I mean, just every cutscene he says something utterly bizarre, and you're just like, what the heck? I keep half thinking he's like gonna turn even though I've played the game, I keep waiting for him to turn out to be like a monster that's trying to pretend to be a human. That's how bizarre Barry Burton is in Resident Evil 1.
On that note, it sounds like Jill's response is that she's just acting like she's in a sitcom.
Oh, Barry!
You were almost a Jill sandwich. I know.
I keep waiting for the laugh track. So I do agree. I think at this point it is really fun, but I don't know how scary it is, and where it's scary, it's almost kind of an accident. While I do think the bones of what it was setting out would lay the ground for genuinely great horror games that could do things scary. For instance, we'll get into that in a minute, but the ink ribbon system I think is a brilliant idea for games that are trying to induce horror. I feel like while those building blocks are there, the execution is just a little too janky that it isn't especially scary, at least nowadays. Maybe we're just desensitized by what's available now and what we've seen the series go, but I think we are of a consensus that while the atmosphere is fun, it's not too spooky. I'll give one brief exception. I don't know how many of y'all read, I know you have to pass by, but actually read the Keeper Diary. Christian, did you read the Keeper Diary?
I believe so. If it's
That's
the one
Itchy
that I'm
Tasty.
thinking. Oh yes.
Yeah, the Itchy. Yeah, Austin, you know of the Keeper Diary if you didn't read it, right? The Itchy Tasty Diary.
Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly, the one you're referring to, yes.
Yeah. I do feel that is one moment. Ironically, it's probably because it's stripped back where you're just reading text. It's not having to listen to voice acting or trying to show you a low poly zombie. It is. I think it settles home what maybe the series should have gone for a little bit more, at least at this stage. Where you start thinking about the conceptual horror, because the little Minecraft zombie chasing you isn't that scary. But thinking about a man slowly losing his sense of self and slowly succumbing to this virus and being turned into a husk of a human being, that's actually a little spooky. That is actually scary if you stop and think about it. Maybe we're too ADHD brain to really stop and think about the implications, but there's another message later in the game where a man's like, yeah, I've been infected and I've taken some stuff to try and slow it, but I know that's just buying me time, and it's just enough time to write my wife, my wife, this letter before I blow my brains out, because I can't stand the thought of becoming one of these monsters. And I feel that's the most effective sense of horror that this game has over, the actual danger to your character or the music, which I do think is fantastic, kind of electro synth soundtrack that really fits the mood of that 80s horror vibe. But I think the most effective moments are those personal letters of these men who realize that they're going to die, and not just die, but die a gruesome, horrible death, and that their corpses are going to be puppeted by this thing afterwards, and the implications of that. I think I'll give it a point there. Maybe you two won't, but I think it gets a point there. Gold star, Resident Evil 1. But I guess if we've gone through that, that's worth enough. We can kind of finally break down a little bit into some of the specifics about survival horror that I promised we were going to talk about earlier. That sound good to you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Fantastic. So, I kind of baited this earlier with what is survival horror. There's a bunch of different kind of conflicting definitions, and I'd actually be interested to hear what you guys think after this, but I'm going to give what I kind of landed on as I think survival horror is. I kind of think it's three main points with two kind of implied points. Those three main points are that you have limited control of your character. That two is that inventory management is a very big part of your experience. And the third is kind of what I call balance of power, which means that there are going to be severe moments where you're outmatched and don't have enough firepower to kill everything, a la something like Doom, but that you still, if you're competent enough, can get these moments of catharsis where you've saved up enough ammo that you can kind of go gung-ho, at least for a little bit. And then the two subpoints are kind of to the inventory management, is that map design has to facilitate inventory management. What that I mean is, it's not enough to go, you have limited inventory. The map needs to facilitate that you have to use a bunch of different things and make decisions about that. I bring up a point in my Resident Evil 2 video that, technically speaking, Halo has limited inventory, but I don't think that makes it part of a survival horror game, because the map design doesn't facilitate needing more than 2 slots to have 2 different guns. And the last subpoint is, since it's survival horror, the game should at least try and be spooky. Whether it succeeds or not is kind of, whatever, but it should at least be going for a spooky aesthetic. I know that's a lot of rambly words, but that's kind of what I think of when I think of what a survival horror game is. I spent the time to write it down beforehand, so I know I have an advantage. But Austin, what do you think of that definition? Would you add anything, take it away? Do you have any strong feelings about the word survival horror?
So I don't really have any issues with any of the how it was defined from your perspective. I probably will condense some things, because I feel like two of your points are almost practically one and the same.
Which ones are that?
Like inventory management and then your balance of power. I feel like that's just just resource management in general. Which is how I just describe it, as just in two parts of survival horror is spooky aesthetic, resource management game.
The reason I think it's mild. The reason I have those two as separate is because I would view something like Amnesia or Outlast as not true survival horror, because you do have inventory management where you're managing multiple items, but there's no form of combat, there's no catharsis, where after you hide for a bit, you can manage your resources in a way that allows you to kind of also go on the offensive once in a while. And I felt at least that was an important, and you could disagree, but the reason I had those separate is I feel like if your game doesn't have combat, it's not really survival horror, it's more of a hiding simulator game, and I thought that was enough to distinguish it intentionally.
Yeah, fair enough. So having combat specifically, yes, that works. I can't express how much I hate horror games that are just, as you said, hiding simulators where you have no ability to
Hiding
fight back.
closet
But that
simulators,
also
yeah.
is one of the few things that actually triggers like fear in me playing a horror game, is being defenseless. But it's not fun.
Interesting.
I hate it.
That's a much bigger conversation that I guess we'll get into a little bit, but I mildly disagree. I'm not saying you're not allowed to feel scary. For me, it triggers the opposite reaction, because if I have to make a decision on am I doing combat or not, how am I going to spend my resources, that's much more tension building. That's the kind of thing that, in a good way, in a fun way, stresses me out and makes me care and invest, and I'm like, oh, I got to do this right. Because if I know the only option is to run faster or sit and wait in a corner, it just utterly kills my kind of investment in the moment-to-moment gameplay, because I know the spooky monsters don't matter. I'm either going to be able to run fast enough, or I just have to sit here and yawn until it's done. But if I have to think, crap, there are 5 zombies, I'm on low health, I've got 3 shotgun shells between me and that herb. Do I fight? How many do I fight? How do I negotiate that? That kind of calculus running constantly in my head is what brings more tension to me, personally, on that one at least.
And I get that, and just kind of continuing that line of thought, like tension and suspense in moments like that, trying to decide, well, do I fight or do I do something else? That I still get that, but that's not what fear is to me. That doesn't give me like a fear feeling as like being defenseless against something that I can't do, like something coming at me that I can literally do nothing about. That's more of a fear rather than suspense.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out as we go through. Christian, I guess 2 questions related to that. 1, what do you think about these definitions of kind of survival horror? And 2, I guess, have you played other horror games that maybe aren't survival horror that you feel this is a different genre, or does it all kind of blend together and it's like, it's just a spooky game, you guys are overthinking it? What's your take on this?
I mean, I think you both have very valid definitions with regards to suspense and fear and horror and what exactly all of that means. I mean, thinking back, I don't know if I don't have much experience in like playing survival horror really at all.
Well, what about other horror? I can think of one example I know you've played is the Scarecrow sections of Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, I guess that. I mean that for me never really invoked any kind of a fear.
They're supposed to be spooky, at least, though.
They do have a spooky vibe. Like they have the spooky music and like. I mean, I guess in that sense, yeah, that was like you could tell it had a spooky vibe to it, but it wasn't like I wasn't like clutching my controller, shaking in a cold sweat. Which apparently that's my definition of fear. So
you're finding that out now,
yeah,
live on the podcast.
I'm learning so much about myself. What a self-discovery we have here. But I think in terms of what you guys were saying, you both make very valid points. I feel like I kind of agree with both of you. Like it's the option. There's this suspense and tension with having the option to fight, but also like, but then again, I don't know what's around the next corner, so maybe I shouldn't fight here and try to save it, because resources are so limited. And then there's also the tension of, oh, the example you gave, there's 5 zombies, I have 3 shells, and there's a green herb. Do you have enough space in your bag for an herb? Like, that's other tension, because you can't, at least in this game, you can't just use it as you pick it up. It has to go into your bag first. So
yeah.
But I also understand what Austin's saying with the being defenseless, having no way to fight, and your option B only hide or run. I can understand where he's coming from too. So I mean, I think yeah, that's what I think.
No, that's allowed. I think that we've hit that. It's going to be interesting. I wanted to make sure we got our perspectives out for people who are listening to kind of understand how we think about this, and as we go forward, our different kind of mentalities. So I think that'll be fun. I did want to toss on to when we were talking about the gameplay and kind of what makes something horror, survival horror. One thing I think this game does really effectively that many other games don't do, and I understand why because it is scary, is make saves a collectible item, a real physical resource. That's kind of a ballsy move, I feel, on this game's part. And I know, Austin, you've got the super special edition where you don't have to deal with that like us peasants. But Christian and I, when we want to save, we got to think about it. It's not like I'm going to run back and save because I just, killed one zombie and run back. It's like I have this many ink ribbons and I really need to think about when I'm going to save. I think that's a clever thing that puts you in the same brain space as the character, because your character, obviously, if this is a real person, is scared to die. They want to avoid enemies, they want to avoid damage because they don't want to die. And you as the player, I think this is a big disconnect, don't really care if you die, especially if you get more knowledge. In a lot of these games that I was even mentioning, Amnesia, I don't care about dying. In fact, dying is useful. One of my main strategies in going through the game like Amnesia is to run forward, hit a checkpoint, intentionally die as a way to more quickly remove enemies, because if you reload from a checkpoint, the enemies despawn, and then keep moving forward. So I'm in a very different, desynchronous headspace from my character, my character clearly doesn't want to die, because they don't come back from that, but me as the player, I don't care. So what the character finds scary and what I find scary are not in alignment, but I tend to think with these limited saves, I'm more likely to be in alignment with my character because, if I die, obviously I'm not losing my life, but I'm losing, in my case, I did, an hour of progress, which, as an adult with children, an hour is very precious to me. So, there's real stakes there for me where I'm like, oh no, I can't die. I don't have time to do this again. So, I think that's a very effective thing the game does. I don't know if either of y'all really have an opinion on that, but that's
I do,
worth
actually,
saying.
comment on that. So, I guess there's kind of two different ways I guess you can probably view having saves a collectible item. I can see, from just kind of looking at it from the certain way, that it really does kind of more immerse you into that feeling of the character, which... You're just kind of going back to your example, hey, I'm an adult, I have all these obligations, I have limited time to play the game. Instead of feeling really into it, a positive feel about what this game is giving to me, dying and losing progress kind of just gets annoying instead. So it's it kind of depends on your mindset when you go into the game. If you're there just to vibe, it's a fantastic idea. If your goal is to try to clear it in limited timetables, it sucks. It really sucks.
Well, but I have a question for you, because did you die at all during your playthrough, Austin?
No.
Okay, well, I did, and this is why I think that fear may be overblown because you didn't die, so you're imagining that's going to be worse than it is. For me, dying and losing that progress, actually, even though I talked about losing an hour, I'm kind of exaggerating, because I think the most important thing about this game is knowledge more than anything. You can clear things hilariously fast if you know exactly what to do. And yeah, you gotta dust off the cobwebs, even for me who's played this a lot of times, but when I died, I lost an hour of wandering, and I was able to redo that in 20 minutes of intentionality, being able to go exactly to my targets in the order I wanted, now that I remembered the best way to do everything. So I think it kind of gets to have its cake and eat it too, where it gives you the fear of thinking, I'm going to lose an hour of progress, holy crap. But then the keep its cake too is that usually your second go through doing the same stuff, it's not actually an hour. It's half the time or less, in my opinion. So that's been my experience. But actually, Christian, you may be more able to speak on this recently, because you probably died more than once based on our conversations.
Yes.
Did you feel after you died, were you able to accomplish the same tasks faster than the first time and get better at them? Or did you really lose that much time and it was really achingly frustrating to have those limited saves?
Yes.
The second?
I would say yes to both. I felt like I learned from it, but also it would frustrate me because I'm the kind of person that, especially in a game like this, where they're in a game like this, I'm the kind of person that clears a room, runs back and saves, clears the next room, runs back and saves. so that I don't have to like keep redoing stuff over and over again.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do that here.
Yeah, this game does not. That's exactly what the save ribbons are intended to stop from happening.
It worked. So I basically was just really intentional about like, I'll clear a section, and then I'll feel like I'll have covered enough space that I don't want to go and redo that whole thing, but I've cleared that section and naturally made it back to the save point.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I did.
How frustrating was that for you?
First learning when I did, before I figured many things out, it was very frustrating. I didn't know I had to equip my gun when I first started the game, because I just assumed in the cutscenes, you know, they have guns. You think
they got a shotgun.
Yeah. you would think she already had her gun ready, but no. Clearly not. And the knife is the knife
Less than useless.
it is the equivalent of trying to use a butter knife to cut through a wooden table. That is the best way I can describe it. If any listener has tried to cut through a wooden table with a butter knife, just please let us know how successful you were.
Is that how successful you were with your knife?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the first zombie killed me twice.
Oh no.
Before
You didn't run from him?
I thought I had to get something behind him because I'm not used to this style of game.
Interesting.
So I thought I had to fight him.
There is ammo if you do kill him and then examine the body. You do get ammo as a reward for doing that, but it's not necessary.
Yeah, but like I didn't know that. So that's why I finally reached out to you guys, and you were like, "Oh, you have to equip the gun." So then I used ammo to kill him. And found out there wasn't really anything behind him. But I felt like just from my experience with other games, not in this genre, not this style of game, I just assumed there's an enemy I have to get. I have to wipe out the enemy and get to wherever they were, because there's probably something there. That's how my mind works.
To kind of go off that, Christian, real quick. I find it interesting how we both kind of started this game a bit differently. So it kind of seems like to me that you got into the game and you just started rolling with it, and you try to hopefully get a grasp of the controls as you go. Is that kind of how you did that? Or did you try to go through a control list first, like kind of what I did? I just tried to see, like, okay, how do I move? How do I aim? How do I do this? And I did make sure I did all that before I left the dining room. So I'm kind of curious what went through your mind when you first started.
I just kind of rolled with it because at least a lot of games today, or like that I played through like my childhood and up to this point, when you first start them, have like some sort of a tutorial level, or as you're going, they have like the quick tips of like press X to open a door, like things like that. So I just kind of assumed there would be something like that here. So I'm not the kind of person that looks at controls and figures stuff out first. I just kind of go head on, assuming that the game's going to tell me what I need to know. And clearly my assumptions were wrong here.
I guess I should have sent the manual over, because I back in the 90s, you would have been assumed to have read the manual before jumping into the game, which, we don't really do anymore because we don't get manuals anymore.
Did anyone ever read the manual before starting a game? I know this is
random.
No, back in when I was a kid, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that was very common. No, so, okay, side tangent, which everyone's here for anyway. If you're listening to the silly podcast, you exist for side tangents. But, like, old RPGs, for instance, literally, Final Fantasy IV, one of the first RPGs I got, the manual literally is a walkthrough through the first half of the game. Like, they're so, like, we know you don't get this, and you're a child, here is a walkthrough. It's not just like they would, like, I don't know what the Resident Evil 1 manual looks like, because I actually haven't read it, but like they might literally solve the first puzzle for you, even just to be like, we want to make sure you kind of get it before you go in. That was the level of detail manuals used to have back in the day.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have a small collection of PS1 and PS2 games that I'm now kind of want to go back and look at the manuals in there and see what they look like, because I don't remember looking at manuals prior to starting a game.
Oh man, maybe we should do a side episode on manuals sometime. That's a little bit of a sidetrack, but yeah. So that's I guess dealing with that. I guess talking about, whether you should have run or not, I think one of the interesting things about this is kind of this MetroidVania-esque setup that this game has, where you've got these left and right wings and different keys blocking everything. How did you guys, I guess I'll bug Austin, what do you think about, you've played these games before, but what do you think about kind of the puzzle-esque setup where you have a lot of options to go through, but you're going to have to narrow them down one at a time, that MetroidVania setup?
I never attributed it to Metrovania because I never played any Metroid games or anything that where that genre is defined.
We'll have to fix that.
But what Resident Evil displays in terms of its map layout, puzzles, and progression through those puzzles is very endearing to me. I really like that method of map progression. It's very fun.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
You're going to have fun when we get to Castlevania. That's all I'm saying. It's a lot of similar ideas, even if it's in a 2D space. Christian, we were just talking about how difficult it was. You're having to not just solve these puzzles, but you come to grips with a new control scheme, learn all these hidden rules that feel like second nature to those who've played before. Were you able to even enjoy any of the puzzles, or was it like just, at this point, it is another frustration on top of a bunch of other crap I'm trying to figure out right now?
I enjoyed the puzzles once I kind of got a feel for the controls. But before I figured out the controls, the puzzles were more frustrating than anything else.
Yeah.
But
I have to ask.
Yes.
Did you get tricked by the poison room?
The one with the gas?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha.
You see a button on the floor and there's a statue you can move. Naturally, with how games are today, you put a statue on top of the button.
How did that go?
I had to redo a few things. Because I didn't save right before I went in.
Oh, Christian, I'm sorry.
Well, you can't get out once the gas starts, so you're stuck in there.
You can if you push the because how you're supposed to avoid that is push the statues over the gas. If you push the statues over, it unlocks it and you can get out, I believe.
My predicament was I pushed both the statues together on top of the button.
Oh, so you couldn't get them? You had
I
stuck
couldn't
them.
move. They were stuck. I couldn't move the statues anymore.
I'm so sorry, Christian.
So I'm literally just running around this room filling with gas, trying to figure out, do I need to shoot something? What did I miss? I'm an idiot. I'm dead.
I kind of get that, because you're not used to the way Resident Evil does puzzles yet.
Exactly.
I'm just in the mindset, as soon as I walk into a room, even on a new game, I'm just thinking, alright, what in here is going to kill me? How do I stop it? And that's just what I do, treat every single room.
I'll get there, I'm sure.
Oh man, this is funny. I'm waiting to see Christian at the end of this, just dual fisting shotguns and being like, not a problem. I already have enough save ribbons. I just did it through without saving. I'm that good.
I got a shotgun.
I believe. I got a shotgun. Is that going to be our Diglett for this?
Oh,
for this?
no.
Yes.
Oh man. Oh man. Anyway, but yeah, I also really enjoy the puzzles. They're a couple of things I love about them. One is the most difficult part is figuring them out. Once you've done it and you want to go back through a speed run, they're not a lot of really frustrating kind of logarithmic, mathematical equations. It's once you get it, you can run back through them quickly. That's one of the greatest things about this game that we'll get to later. I don't know if I'll be able to convince you to go through a second playthrough, but the first playthrough is very slow, methodical, lots of confusion and difficulties, and then the second one, it plays like an action game. That's kind of the beauty of these classic games, but I do love the puzzles that are interesting enough to kind of get you thinking, but they're quick enough that once you know the solution, you can kind of just force through them without really having to slow down. I think another puzzle worth special mention that Austin, you and I actually had some difficulty on, and I think we talked to Christian about this off air, but I'd love to get it on air, is the picture, kind of the picture painting puzzle where you get to the end. There's this area with a bunch of crows, and there's a picture at the end that says, like, please, I long for death, give me death. And there's a bunch of pictures of different ages of a man and what you're supposed to do with that. Christian, what was your reaction? I want to hear unfiltered first, how you handled that puzzle, because Austin and I had kind of some differing opinions on it.
My first thought was, how did these crows get inside this house?
I mean, that's a good thing to ask.
And then my second thought was, I'm just gonna push all the buttons and see what happens.
He is not first in the ways of Resident Evil yet.
My third thought was, those crows killed me, so I'm gonna do it again. And then my fourth thought was, let's go, they're all different ages, so let's go youngest to oldest and then see if that works.
Okay. So did you not feel like the hint at the end was helpful enough to know to go youngest to oldest on that?
After doing the first round of just pushing the buttons, and as I pushed the buttons, I read everything, but I wasn't sure how to undo what I had already did. So I was like, yeah. I'm committed. Let's just push them all. Let's just see what happens. Who knows? Maybe this is what they want me to do. The crows disagreed, but if I had taken the time and just read everything and not pressed buttons first, I feel like I would have gotten to the conclusion of, yeah, just go infant. I think it was newborn to infant, to young boy, young man, all the way to death, and then receive my reward. So that's what happened.
Because Austin felt it was very intuitive, and this isn't his. Props to you. I guess you explained, but I want to give you extra credit. This isn't you just remembering the solution. That puzzle's not in the remake, so you really did just walk in and felt like it was pretty intuitive, right?
Yeah, so my experience when I walked into the room was, I'm like, okay, well, this is obviously going to be a puzzle room, because I remember in at least the remake it was a puzzle in that area, even though it's drastically different. So I walked up to the first painting and inspected it, and I saw, like, shows a man, blah, blah, blah. There's a button. Do you want to press it? And I'm thinking, I'm not pressing anything until I know what this room's about. So I didn't touch the button. I walked to the end at that point and saw the picture saying, like, oh, unto death. And I looked at one more picture, and it was a different age. I'm like, oh, okay, that's just youngest to oldest. Boop, 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 done.
Yeah. I actually even messed it up myself, even though I'd played it before and I remembered it. But when it said, give me your unto death, I was like, oh, he wants the old man closest to death. So I only pressed that button, and then the crows disagreed, as Christian said. But I was pretty sure I was wrong, and I was mostly just trying to see what would happen. But I find it interesting that each of us had a different reaction to the stupid puzzle. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's fun. A lot of them are... But that's the kind of thing, like I was mentioning earlier, once you know the answer, you know the answer. You're not going to have to think about that again too hard on a repeat playthrough, you know? Mm-hmm. But it does stop and make you think and kind of rack your brain, and they're not so easy that we all, for Austin, I guess, who's the super genius among us, he just walked in and solved it. But for two of us, one of us who even had played the game before, actually got it wrong on the first try. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's an interesting kind of view on the puzzles there. Okay, I know we're getting near the end, but I kind of wanted to go over, because, you know, this isn't exactly a walkthrough, but I thought it'd be worth talking about some of those crazy moments that happened in the story for us, and kind of some of the big differences we got, because the game starts out, you know, You're playing as one of your characters, the other one goes missing. Hey, let's go find that guy. And then pretty soon you're separated and you'll meet your companion, again, Barry if you're Jill, and Claire if you're Chris, and try and find them. Are there any... I'm sorry, I said Claire and what I meant was Rebecca. So unfortunately, I'm a dumbass, so we're just going to go from there. No, Claire is not in this game, but Rebecca is. And there's just some... I kind of wanted to go over some of the big moments that... I want to hear. I know we kind of talked briefly, but... Austin, tell me about Barry, please.
Barry is a wonderful, even if he's a bit sus, man that is wandering this... Why did I forget the word? Mansion. Yes, it's a mansion. Yeah, I'm clearly the smart one. I don't know what a mansion is. But, yeah, he sure is weird, but he sure is funny.
Yeah. Christian, you have any strong opinions about Barry?
Something's off about that man.
What do you think's off about him? Just like the weird dialogue, or like script character-wise? Do you think there's something off about him?
So, I have two theories.
Okay.
My first theory is either he's up to something and he's some sort of sneaky behind-the-backs guy. My second thought is he is scared and weird. There's one situation where he's like, we should split up. I'll go back in the room we were just in. You go to that entirely new wing of the manor. And I'm like, this... He's like... I don't know. He's bad at coming up with plans. He's like the Wish version of Freddy from Scooby-Doo. Or not even Wish.
He did save your life when you grabbed the shotgun.
Yeah, but why was he there? He was supposed to be in the dining room, you know? And
okay.
I don't know. He's something's not right about him. Okay. I don't know what, because I haven't played this before, but Barry has me wary.
Okay, yeah, wary on Barry. I like it. Now, I don't know if this helps or hurts your theory. Part of you, I'm not going to confirm nor deny the plot implications. I will say there's very likely some gameplay limitations, because one of my favorite moments on the Chris playthrough where you meet Rebecca and she's like, oh, I'm like one of the last surviving members of that team we went to come look for, you know? And she's like... She's like, all right, I finally met another survivor, thank God. Can I join you on your team? And you can say yes or no. And I'm like, yeah, let's get some help. So I hit yes. And she's like, thank goodness. I'll stay here while you go on a... when you say yes, come help me out. She's like, I'm going to help you out by staying here. Which is... I'm sure it makes a change, because I don't know if you've noticed or we've talked about a little bit, but there's a bunch of little story cutscene changes depending on your actions. Oh, you know what? That leads right into the next one. When you meet Jan, everyone had, I guess, a slightly different thing. I found a corpse when I went to go... Jan is the giant snake, by the way. I should have mentioned that. But outside the giant snake room, I met a corpse. There was no one there for me. Just... Yeah, no, he was there, but he was dead. And I happen to know, I can pretend why is that? But I happen to know I just took too long to get to him. And there's an internal clock, timer. And I think if you take more than 30 minutes from starting the game to get to him, or maybe it's an hour, I don't remember, he just dies and doesn't have a cutscene. It is unfortunate because, Austin, you got to witness greatness when you met him alive, did you not?
Yes, as he ushered to me in some of his dying words, there are terrible demons. Ouch!
Ouch! But see, what's even funnier is Christian, you found him alive, right?
Yes.
But he sounds nothing like that, did he? That impression is not a thing you've heard before, is it?
It sounded like someone was reading off a teleprompter.
Okay.
It's just, there are terrible demons.
So it's even better. Is like you can almost forgive the Resident Evil 1 game because again, it's a Japanese game. They've even admitted that they like didn't have the funds to hire professional actors or anything like that. They just literally grabbed people off the street who could speak English. Not even well, sometimes. They weren't even always native English speakers. And it was like, can you speak English and you don't sound Japanese? Okay, you're in our game. Some of them are like Canadian or like Belgian, I think. Like, I don't even know all the details. They don't even know who all of them are. They haven't been able to hunt them all down. But what's even sadder is they added in kind of a CPR minigame in the extra mode that I made you not play, Christian. And it required extra dialogue from that character whose name I'm forgetting right now. Richard. Anyway. And so they replaced him, in that version so that he could have extra dialogue and things like that for that. But they just decided to leave him as the main voice in the thing. So that means that the bad voice acting in your version isn't from 1998 or whatever. It's from like 2007 or whenever the remake came out. And it still sounds like that.
That's even worse.
Yes, it is. We had Resident Evil 4 had come out by the time that game came out, and we were still like, that was the voice acting they went with. I don't know if they were trying to make it fit in by being bad or what, but it's a treat. But yeah, we fought that giant snake, and that leads to one of the other kind of alternate, takes. Did any of y'all get bit? Did we all get bit by the snake? Austin, did you get bit?
I did, and it's kind of funny because I started doing the snake shortly into my second time playing the game because I played it in 2 batches to get to our checkpoint. And I didn't remember what the controls were when I started. I forgot that like X and all this other things did things or how to aim my gun. So I waltzed in and like, let's fight, Snake! And I'm like, what? Why am I not aiming? Why can't I shoot? Oh no! And then it bit me. And then
but you made it out alive in the
end,
end, right?
Yeah, I made it alive and killed it, but it did not go as well as I hoped it would go.
Did you kill it or did it run off?
Well, it ran off. Yeah, it's not dead,
okay,
but
yeah.
I defeated the snake, and it left.
Yeah. See, I just avoided, like, I got bit, but I just didn't even engage with it. I just ran and grabbed the item and ran back out. What about you, Christian?
See, again, I didn't know that was an option. I didn't think you could run back out. I thought I had to...
Can.
I ran and got the item, and then I kept circling the room with my bazooka, and I used all my bazooka ammo on him.
I'm going to be specific. It's your grenade launcher, because there is a missile bazooka launcher later in the game that's a different thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Grenade launcher. I used all of that, my ammo on him, but he did bite me.
And so we all got the scene where you walk out, and it's like, oh no! I am poisoned.
Mm-hmm.
What happened for you guys?
I woke up in the room where the serum was at that I had to get for Richard initially, and was like, "Oh, I'm awake now," and then I just kept playing. That was it.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you're playing as Chris, well, first off, I didn't get Richard a serum because, he was just dead. But when you play as Chris, he walks out and goes, "Oh, I have a terrible headache," and Rebecca shows back up and is like, "Oh no, don't worry, I'll protect you." And then you have to run to the other side of the mansion where the serum is, grab it, and come back to where Chris is. And if you've planned ahead and you've wiped out a pretty good path, that's actually not that hard. You just walk there and walk back. If you happen to have not made a safe path there, you are playing as Rebecca with no access to any of your item boxes, 1 pistol, and 15 bullets to your name. Hope you make it. So, yeah. I happen to know, of course, that was coming in prepared accordingly, but yeah, that's another one of those kind of beginner's traps that if you're not careful about. Chris's game in general is harder than Jill's. He's got fewer item slots, and a couple moments where he really does kind of get like, all right, here's the harder version of this. So, but I played the game enough, it wasn't that big a deal. All right. Thinking about wrapping up, are there any other big topics before we kind of hit the final sections that you guys want to talk to? Anything I glanced over or missed in our conversation?
Not that I can think of, and there's not really a lot of big moments other than me getting lost at one point because of the blue gem puzzle that I had. They actually remake screwed me over slightly in that one because I thought, oh, I need 2 gems to accomplish this, and I just walked around with the 1 gem and didn't realize, oh, I just need to walk there with the 1 gem, and spent a good 20 minutes trying to figure out what to do.
That's not just remake. That's another one of those kind of poor in execution, because it does tell you need these 2 gems to get the solution, and you do need them to get the final prize, but you can use just one to get the progression item. So I agree, that's not greatly conveyed. Did we just tell you what to do on that one, Christian, at that point, because you were having a frustrated time, or did you figure that one out?
You guys told me, and I'm so glad that I'm not the only one that had that issue, because it literally says it looks like a red gem and a blue gem would fit. So I assumed, just like you did, Austin, you had to go find the red gem, or else you couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So I could have gotten it, like, I went and got like 3 other things before I came back and realized I could have gotten it at the beginning of the game.
That was the last thing I got.
Me too.
Oh man. Yeah, so some of the puzzles aren't greatly conveyed. It's the first game. I am willing to give them a little bit of a pass, but yeah, that definitely gets improved. I'm so excited to come back to Remake and have... you've played it before, Austin, but Christian go like, oh, it's like the game, but not frustrating, I'm hoping is how his reaction is to it.
In some ways, there are some changes.
I mean, yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, I'm so excited. But yeah. Alright, some of this we talked about. Let's hit these bullet points real quick as we kind of wrap up on this one. I think the first question is it still scary? Because it really was considered scary back in the day. I think we kind of answered this before. Are we all in agreement that's a no, Austin?
It's a no for me, dog.
Yeah, Christian, is it scary?
It's gonna be a no.
Yeah, for me, the only thing scary is how much fun I'm having with you guys. Okay, but after that, I think the next question is it still fun, Christian?
Yes.
Answer honestly. Don't lie to me, boy.
I can see fun somewhere.
Let the hate
The cutscenes
flow
are fun.
through you. Yeah, but that's a small percentage of the playtime. I don't think, if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I do not get the impression you're having fun yet.
Not necessarily. I wouldn't say I'm having a ton of fun yet. She could have reached the thing off the shelf, and that was so frustrating for me.
Oh yeah, you got to the guardhouse and you were like a pixel off from like trying to get those stairs up, and it's not even like a puzzle. It's just like move these stairs, walk upstairs, push, like it's just kind of a busy work thing.
Exactly.
And you got hung up there a while, didn't you?
I did. I kept on. I pushed it back. I pushed it forward. I pushed it back, and because of the fixed camera, I couldn't see that there was half a I feel like it was less than half a pixel between the wall and the steps, and I had to push the steps all the way into the wall, and I mean, she didn't need the steps. You could look at her; she was tall enough.
She's very small.
She could have reached
She's very
it.
short.
She could have jumped. If you have a shotgun, you can use the shotgun to reach up there. Worst case scenario.
That's right.
Just-
She's got a shotgun.
You got a shotgun.
Oh my word. Yeah, I will say, I will give the game, the version you're playing, not that this makes a difference, it probably wouldn't have made a difference. It's possible it would have been easier to see on one of the versions that has a little bit higher resolution. You are playing on the lowest, crunchiest resolution version of the game, on the DS version, so. But probably not. It probably would have been the same thing that was frustrating. Alright. Austin, is it still fun?
I'm having a good time.
Yeah, alright. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I'm, of course, shocked and awe. I'm having a blast. I love these games. I will say, the first time I played Resident Evil 1, I actually didn't finish it. I went on to go play some other games first. So it's possible that this becomes more fun once you're more familiar with some of the tropes. It's kind of fun in retrospect. I don't know if that's just my taste in games, and I would have always loved it, or if, Christian, you're going to come back later after playing some more and be like, actually, I see the appeal now. It just had a rough start, but it'll be interesting to see that later on. But yeah, as of right now, I'm having a blast too, so yeah. Alright, next one. Do you guys feel the cutscenes and story enhance or detract from the game? Austin.
Oh, it makes the game for me. For a good portion of the game, it's enhancing. Because, again, I'm not immersed in the horror aspect of it. To me, this is like a comedic, campy survival game and the cutscenes elevate that so well.
All right, yeah, I think this game is fun and good and enjoyable without the cutscenes, but I think it is elevated to one of my favorites because of that. Part of me wants to give this game, we'll get into Raves, part of me would rate this game kind of low because it has a lot of rough edges and a lot of flaws and a lot of frustrations, but I can't stop thinking about it because of the memes. It really, I think it, and Christian, I think you've said this before, but tell me how you're feeling about those cutscenes. They make it better experience?
I love them. They're great cutscenes, and I need more of these cutscenes.
Oh, you will get some.
Good.
And I'll show you. I'll show you some of the ones. Because the other thing is, we'll get into this in the second episode, but there's a lot of differences and little tweaks based on, again, what gameplay you do. And I'll show you a compilation of all the possible cutscenes you can get, so you get to see all the glory of Barry Burton.
Okay, good. I need to figure that guy out.
All right. So I guess I'll go first on this one, but I'm asking, but then I'm going to answer it. What has impressed you the most about this game? I think for me, despite all of its rough edges, it's how well it does lay out design ethos. I agree that the execution isn't perfect, but a lot of the things that work in the games that I love the most, again, cough cough remake, are set up here. The stuff that is changed that makes this game work from 1 to remake isn't fundamental. It's not like the difference between Resident Evil 2 and then Resident Evil Remake 2, which are just like entirely different genres. The building blocks here work. They just needed some tweaking on the execution, is my opinion. And we see that because of Remake, where they tweak the execution just slightly. It's 80% still the same game. And it becomes it goes from a game that I like pretty well to like one of my top 5 favorite games of all time ever. So I think it's impressive that so long ago, under such technical limitations and without a blueprint to look back on, they were able to at least get the building blocks of this entire genre, which took over the entire PlayStation 1 era of games. So many games were based off of this. Parasite Eve, Silent Hill, so many other games took inspiration from Resident Evil, and they managed to get that much right here. I think that's impressive. Christian, I know this game hasn't been impressing you a lot, and you can answer it was the cutscenes or whatever, but what's the thing that's impressed you the most about this game so far?
I sound like a record, but it is the cutscenes. I didn't expect them, honestly. Going into it, I did not expect the fun, campy cutscenes, and it put me in a good mood from the start of the game.
That faded, but at least started off strong.
Yeah, we started off strong.
What about you, Austin? What's impressed you the most about it?
This might be slightly cheating because technically the remake did this for me, but Resi 1 would have done the same thing for me as well if I started with it, is the fact that it managed to, in a relatively short time, get me to appreciate and enjoy this really unique control scheme. When I went into it thinking, I hate this is the worst in every way, but it's honestly not. The control scheme and design that they set in place to make their game work was really well executed.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good one. All right. Counter to that, gotta have some balance here. Austin, what do you like in the least about this game?
The least, there's not anything that's really gnawing at me that's like, this is really bad or bad that I want fixed, other than maybe that I think the default control or like button mapping is a bit funky, so maybe that's my least favorite part so far, is the wacky button
remappable controls. Yeah, the menus really do feel wrong. I guess, one thing you got to avoid, you could say, is maybe ink ribbons, which you didn't have to deal with, so...
Yeah, I don't know if that would have been worse than the button mapping, because I would have been expecting and used to the save ribbons at that point.
Yeah. That's fair. Christian, be brutal, be honest. I want to hear the negatives, because I think we need to be honest about that, and I think it's fun that you have a different perspective on this. What do you liking the least about it right now? You can hit a couple things, because it sounds like there's a couple frustrations here.
I do have a couple things, and again, like you said, maybe part of this was covered in the manual, but and it's just me not being used to this style of a game, but the lack of initial direction of just kind of how long it took me to figure out you go into your bag and then you use items from there, and if it works then it does, if not it doesn't, instead of just clicking on it. So there's that. The controls, again, as I got toward the end of this round, I felt like I was getting a better handle of the controls, so the controls are not as bad. The button mapping is a little weird. Those stairs really frustrated me.
The stairs?
Yeah.
The stairs in the guardhouse.
Yes,
Yeah.
The guardhouse stairs. But
oh man. Yeah, that's totally fair. I think what I enjoyed the least is I don't like the stun locking dogs, and that's just because I got beat by them this time. I like being punished for mistakes or being over cocky, and I even knew those dogs were there, so like maybe I should, but like they should be able to hit you, but I went in with full health and just got backed into a corner and didn't even get a chance to heal or pull out a gun or anything, just the way like it happened to happen. I wish there was a little bit more specificity on the placement. I think what Austin had, which was like 2, 2, and 2, would have been more manageable because you couldn't have gotten stun locked, 3 dogs in a row before you could react. So I guess I will say, and that's honestly a tampering with the American version, but I don't like how they increased the difficulty in the American version. It didn't feel like, oh, I lost those 3 dogs because, like I was cocky. I should have like gone in and saved first, but I kind of feel like you just turn a corner and 3 dogs stun lock you until you die is not a super fun way. It didn't feel like I wasn't cautious enough. It just was like I should have known they were there and I didn't, and I kind of got punished for that. It felt a little bit of a beginner's trap. So I guess I'll say, because you guys have experienced this too, some of the beginner's traps are a little bit frustrating in a game that does send back your progress so much. It's not so bad on replays, but that first time through, it's fun when you go, I should have seen that. Like the poison room one, I'm sorry you pushed them where you couldn't get them, but the poison room one, it's like, I don't blame the game for that. I think that's, hey, if you think ahead and are really cautious, you can get it. Kind of same with the painting, maybe, but some of the other ones, like not like you said, not the lack of conveyance, or not really explaining that the knife is useless, or that you can run away from the first zombie. Some of those things just kind of feel like beginner's traps, and I wish the game did a little bit better at kind of conveying its rules before throwing you into the blender, I guess. Yeah. All right, last 2 here. I don't even know that I can answer this one because I kind of know already, but yeah. Austin, what are you hoping will happen in the second half of the game?
I kind of already know what does, so...
Yeah, but like, the things I guess you don't know are the things you're hoping for even in this version.
I am looking forward to experiencing this, or classic versions of some of the upcoming boss fights, and seeing how that compares to the remake that I'm expecting. That's the best I got for you, man, because I kind of know the plot. Yeah,
exactly. The plot's obviously not. That's why what the last question is only going to apply to Christian. I guess I'll say what I'm hoping for in the second half is, having obviously played this several times, that I don't make a doofus of myself and get killed again. I know what's gonna happen. I know the gameplay and the other stuff, but yeah, I'm hoping it's a smooth experience. I guess I'll say I'm hoping in the second half that Christian finally feels comfortable with the controls and it ends up being a smoother experience. Bit of a heads up, Christian, because but I guess I want to hear what you say, and then I'll confirm one thing for you. But what are you hoping for in the second half, Christian?
Hoping for in the second half, I'm hoping to just kind of be more comfortable in the game, and that it will be just a smoother ride compared to the first half. Now that I've kind of gotten some of those beginner traps out of the way, I'm going to try every item that I can in every situation, and I'm not going to wander around for an hour looking for a red gem.
You're actually, that's one of the things I wanted to say. I'm going to slightly confirm this. We'll see how your gameplay experience is, but the second half of Resident Evil is significantly more linear and streamlined than the first half. You kind of stop wandering around big open spaces and start tackling a series of smaller, more condensed spaces. So, bit more combat, bit more resource management where you're still trying to decide how many guns to bring, but you're not really wondering where to go for nearly as long for the rest of the game. So we'll see how that impacts your experience. Austin, you and I plot-wise already know what is going to happen, so I'm only going to ask this to Christian. Got any other big predictions for like the plot and where it's going to go?
I may be way off here, and you guys may laugh at me. I think we're gonna kill Barry.
Okay. You think you're gonna fight Barry and kill him?
I don't know why, but he's just he's sus.
Okay. What do you think happened to Chris and your team leader Wesker?
Well, I know. I have
you haven't seen them in your playthrough, right?
Not my playthrough. I have. Yeah. Having played some of Resident Evil 4 and some of 5, I know that Wesker is.
Don't say it. Don't tell him.
I know something is suspicious.
Right.
And I don't know what's going on with Chris. He may be suspicious too.
Chris is suspicious too, huh?
I don't know.
Even though you were playing him in 5?
I don't know.
Okay, so your big prediction is we're gonna kill Barry because he's secretly evil, right?
I think we're gonna kill Barry. I think that's my main thing. I feel like there are gonna be more snakes falling out of the sky.
Oh man,
that surprised me. I didn't know there were gonna be snakes.
Yeah, they're sneaky.
Why is it always snakes?
Exactly. Okay, so your big prediction is we kill Barry. I think that's a good one. We'll come back and see next time. Well, fellas, thank you so much for doing this with me. This is one of my favorite series, and you guys are my favorite guys, and I am just so blessed to get to do this. So, looking forward to hitting that next one. Next time we're going to finish the game. I know that's crazy to believe, but I think we're going to just blast through this next one, and I'm looking forward to see what it goes. My name's Dallen Malna.
Good to meet you. My name's Austin.
No, you're supposed to do the... Yeah, I always say it's me and then Austin and then Christian on this one, remember? Do you not remember me saying that?
I was trying to think of something funny. It took me a second.
Okay. Christian, do you have a sign-off?
I got a shotgun.
Okay.
This is Christian.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. All right. Love you guys. I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.